Bang, and we are back. Next is a fireside chat with a OG in the Bitcoin space. The host of this special chat is a former journalist and a big technology enthusiast. But before getting involved in journalism, he was a project manager at a firm that built distributed software on Hyperledger. Please welcome our host of this chat, the CEO of Crypto Briefing, Mitchell Moos. Joining Mitchell amongst the top recognized serial Bitcoin advocates and entrepreneurs in the space. He founded Shapeshift in August 2014 as an elegant, secure, and first solution to digital asset exchanges. He has been a featured guest on Bloomberg, Fox Business, CNBC, BBC Radio, The Peter Schiff Show, and numerous other blockchain industry conferences. His past affiliations include BitInstant, Coinapult, and Satoshi Dice, which was responsible for most of the world's Bitcoin transactions in 2012 and 2013. Please welcome back to BlockDown, the one, the only Erik Voorhees. Mitch, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hey, Erik, it's really a pleasure to meet you because, as the moderator just said, you really are a Bitcoin OG. So I'm sure a lot of people got in this space because of the activism you've been doing around cryptocurrency.
Well, thank you. Very, very happy to be here and appreciate the welcome.
So, yeah, I am the CEO of Crypto Briefing. So I'm probably going to center this around several big news items that have come out recently and try to get your opinion about them and how they impact the greater cryptocurrency and blockchain ecosystem. I did take the time to look at a lot of your past interviews, so I'd like to break some new ground on your takes on stuff and not just go over the same things like Satoshi Dice and beat that to death, and we can talk about Shapeshift and what you're doing now, because I did see your integration with Thor Chain. I think that's pretty cool too.
Yeah.
So to start us off, let's talk about the recent Coinbase IPO. In one of your past interviews, you likened centralized exchanges as something that's akin to just the old school banks. Like, what do you think about Coinbase's IPO? They're now trading at like $100 billion. What role do they play in the cryptocurrency ecosystem? And should centralized exchanges play an integral role in cryptocurrency going forward?
Yeah, so I have a few different opinions on this. I've been a fan of, an advocate of, and have a lot of respect for Coinbase since their beginning, 8 years ago or however long. At the same time, the importance of self-custody is paramount. The entire purpose of digital assets, of blockchains, of Bitcoin, is that people have full self-sovereignty over value. And that cannot happen when it's a custodial company. So Coinbase, is one of the top two custodians in the world for crypto, them and Binance. But I think that is very important because it helps people start learning about how cryptocurrency works, and removes some of the complexities. So, literally millions of people have been introduced to Bitcoin through Coinbase. That's a tremendous achievement. And they deserve a lot of credit for doing that. And they were able to do that because they made the experience easy. Now, by making the experience easy, they often removed some of the most important attributes of Bitcoin, like the immutability angle. But I see that as a bridge, right? A lot of people will learn about Bitcoin. They'll buy their first on Coinbase. And as they start understanding what it is, they'll learn the importance of self-custody. They'll learn how to use it safely. They'll learn how to manage their own keys. And there's other companies that give them a fairly easy way to do that. So I just see that as a very important stepping stone. And I'm super proud of what they've done. I'm excited for their listing this week. And kudos to them for building, the most, what I would say is the most important company in all of crypto.
Let's talk about self-custody then. I mean, people regularly trust other other corporations, other entities to hold their assets for them. Like a bank is a canonical example of this, where I'll go to the bank, I'll give them a bunch of my money, they're holding it for me. And I trust that I can go there and get it back. It's guaranteed by the government. I'm pretty certain that when I go into a branch, I'll be able to get the money that's on an account. Why is self-custody so important, in your opinion, in terms of pushing the financial sector forward?
Yeah. So in a model where finance is always handled by a custodian, which is the status quo, right? Like every bank is a custodian, and every major financial institution is a custodian, and no one is quite ever sure where the assets sit. Like the dollars in your bank account aren't physical dollars. They're certainly not backed by gold, and they themselves are on deposit with like a regional bank and then the Federal Reserve. So, but in any case, it's held by someone else, not by you. And what that means is that you are subject to their rules, and more importantly, you're subject to the rules of the state under which those entities are licensed. So all banks are essentially branches of the government in that they have very special licenses that give them the privilege of holding other people's money and of creating money out of thin air. And that means that you, as a person who holds money at the bank, are subservient to those rules. That means that you do not have sovereignty over your wealth. That means you are basically at the behest of politicians and how they think money should be managed. So for those people who have no problem with politicians managing their lives for them, having a custodian is no big deal, right? And a lot of people feel comfortable having the government taking care of them. Personally, for me, I don't feel that way. I want independence. I want sovereignty over my own life. And I think a lot of other people share that view. And that has just never been possible in a world where all your money had to be held by a custodian. So now that crypto is here, those who choose can leave that custodial environment and actually have control over their own assets for the first time, in any of our lifetimes. So I think that's a very special thing, and is takes some educating to know how to do that responsibly and safely, but is very empowering for any individual in the world that cares to seize it.
Do you and Shapeshift custody your own assets, as in holding the company's assets in like your own cryptocurrency wallets rather than using a traditional bank?
So Shapeshift is non-custodial in that we don't hold any customer money. Shapeshift obviously has some of its own money, most of which we keep in crypto for obvious reasons, because dollars suck. And we hold it in various methods. A lot of it is in multi-sig cold storage. Some of it is in hot wallets that we're using more day to day. So it's a different apparatus for different use cases.
So you really do practice what you preach here in terms of custodying your own assets. So that's great. And this definitely is, in my opinion, definitely a shift in paradigm, because never before have people really thought about, there have been people who certainly have kept like cash on their mattress and they'll keep it, but those have been fringe people. Like those are the crazies who don't trust the government. But now that crypto has come along, self-custody truly has become more acceptable, and really perhaps should be the default way that companies and individuals hold their assets. So this is certainly a trend that I think is going to be developing more and more over the future.
Yeah, to put a clear understanding on this, when you have money held with a custodian, whether it's fiat at your bank or Bitcoin at Coinbase or any other crypto custodian, when you go to withdraw that money or send it to someone, it is always at the permission of that company and at the permission of the rules of the government, of the politicians that company is in the jurisdiction of. So, Coinbase can always freeze an account and prevent you from getting your Bitcoins out. Why would they do this? They're probably not doing it just to be mean. They might do it because you haven't verified some aspect of your identity with them. They might do it because some of the Bitcoin that you deposited was quote unquote tainted by some other transaction that happened in the past that you may or may not have any familiarity with. They might do it because the government sent them a subpoena and told them to do it. There's a whole host of reasons why they could block your account, but you are always at their behest, right? So you never really have sovereignty over your own money. And when you hold it yourself, that is never a question. You have to ask for no person's permission. No one has to sign off on your ability to move your own value. And I think that's new to people only because the banking system works and requires custody of everything. But in other elements of life, people would be pretty horrified if you needed someone's permission to do something. So, like, for example, I don't need anyone's permission to send a message of a communication, a letter to a friend. I can do that through a number of channels. No one can stop me. I need no one's permission for that. Why should I not be able to do that with money also, right? If I'm a sovereign individual, I should be able to send information to people freely without anyone's permission, and I should be able to send money to people without anyone's permission. And I think over time, people will start to become not just more familiar with that concept, but actually start demanding it.
Now, that's pretty profound because it shakes up the status quo of what a lot of people believe in and are accustomed to.
Totally.
We're pretty used to going to a bank and filling out a 2-page form if we want to wire money somewhere and explaining exactly what it's going to be used for. So that raises the question, how are you changing that at Shapeshift? What are you doing that's non-custodial, and how are you challenging that status quo?
Yeah, so when Shapeshift started, it was just a simple exchange, essentially, where if you had Bitcoin and you wanted Litecoin, you send Bitcoin in and Litecoin is spit out, kind of like a vending machine. And Shapeshift was the counterparty to that trade. So we would receive your Bitcoin and we would send you Litecoin from our own wallets. It was non-custodial in that we weren't holding a balance for users. We didn't have anything on deposit from our customers. And in 2019, we released our new platform, which is more like a fully featured interface wallet where you can hold your assets, trade them still, send and receive them, available on web and mobile. And that is still non-custodial. So the customer is still always in control of their own keys. So they can use different wallets with the Shapeshift platform. They can use hardware wallets like Trezor or Ledger or KeepKey. They can use the mobile app in which the keys are held on the device. They can use Portis in which the keys are held just through a username and password combination. But in all cases, the user has their seed phrase. The user has full control over their assets, and Shapeshift can't take that money even if we wished to. So that's always been a principle of ours. And then just recently, from January till now, we've been integrating decentralized exchanges so that when people do the trades, they are no longer going through Shapeshift anymore either. And as of just yesterday, we did our final intermediary trade with customers where we would take one asset and send another one. So that system is now fully retired. And forever on from this point, we will only be integrating decentralized protocols.
Well, congratulations. That's a pretty big step. Because I read that in the past, that was a point of friction between regulators, you and Shapeshift, in that different jurisdictions were requiring you to start collecting customer information contrary to your values of being a non-custodial intermediary.
Yeah, when we started the company, the goal was to protect people, protect them in two ways. One was not holding their funds, and the other was not taking their personal private information. We thought both of those were important. Because we were arguably an intermediary for the trades, by 2018, we came to the opinion that we were actually going to have to be treated like a bank, which meant that we were going to have to fully KYC every customer that was trying to do a trade. I was and remain vehemently ethically opposed to doing that. I don't think it is morally okay to endanger 99% of good people just in order to make it a little bit easier to catch the occasional bad person. I think that is a perversion of how justice should work, and I don't want to be doing it, and I don't think others should be forced to do that. But we are, a company that has to follow the laws. Otherwise, we get thrown in jail. So when we implemented KYC in 2018, it was a pretty abysmal experience. Our customers totally hated it. We lost almost all of them. Our employees hated it, lost many of them. I hated it. And we didn't have a solution to allow people to trade without KYCing. Meanwhile, this technology of decentralized exchange has been getting better and better and better. And in 2020, everyone saw Uniswap rise from obscurity to one of the leading exchanges in the world. And this decentralized exchange technology has now gotten sufficiently good such that we've been able to integrate it into Shapeshift and allow all of our customers to trade through those protocols, which means we're not an intermediary anymore, and which means we do not need to treat ourselves like a bank. And so we can give people back their privacy. And this is a huge, huge win, I think, and something I'm really proud to have been part of.
Yeah, so let's talk about decentralized exchanges, because I really do think that this is a pivotal moment in the cryptocurrency industry where not only are people able to, without permission, send money to each other, but also now start conducting exchanges. Like, this is the next component to this problem of disintermediating traditional, like, government and finance from people's money and people's ability to trade. So with the rise of things like Uniswap, SushiSwap, PancakeSwap, what does that mean for the cryptocurrency industry, and how is Shapeshift going to build on top of that to add value to customers?
Yeah. So decentralized exchange has been sort of theoretical since even when Shapeshift started back in 2014. And a lot of people asked us, like, what good is Shapeshift if people can just do like atomic swaps, right? That was kind of always the argument. Atomic swaps are functional, but they do not scale and they do not meet a UX need. There is no case of atomic swap exchanges achieving any degree of high volumes. And there's a number of reasons for that. But what projects like Uniswap have done is create these liquidity pools, which is a totally different model. And they have demonstrated empirically high scale trading in the billions of dollars per day. That model is really, really profound and important and clearly works well. The problem with all the DEXs up until this week has been that they have been Ethereum only, or there have been a few now on Binance Smart Chain. But they only exist within that chain itself. So all the Ethereum-based DEXs are on Ethereum, and they only trade Ethereum tokens. Binance Smart Chain DEXs like PancakeSwap only exists on Binance Smart Chain and only trades Binance Smart Chain assets, BEP20 assets. Thor Chain launched this week on Tuesday, and despite the Coinbase listing, I think the Thor Chain launch is actually going to be a much more profound milestone for the whole ecosystem, even though most people don't realize this yet. Thor Chain uses the Uniswap model of liquidity pools, but does this across chains. So for the first time ever, you can trade native unwrapped Bitcoin for native unwrapped Ethereum in a decentralized way. This has never existed before. It's always has wrapping or atomic swaps or something that is, kind of like a big asterisk. And today the asterisk is gone. You can trade native Bitcoin for native Ethereum, decentralized through Shapeshift with our integration with Thor Chain. This is hugely, hugely profound. I mean, it means that like the Tether Bitcoin market, which is the largest crypto market ever, an ERC20 Tether versus Bitcoin native, can now exist in a decentralized way. That has never been possible before. So that's huge. And hopefully people will start learning more about Thor Chain. It has this like silly, stupid name, and I think that throws a lot of people off. But it's like one of the most profound technologies that I've ever seen since I first learned about Bitcoin.
So you're telling me I can take an unwrapped Bitcoin and go onto Shapeshift and without any intermediaries, trade that into Ethereum, raw Ethereum?
Yeah. And I did this on Tuesday. So on Tuesday, Thor Chain launched, and we have been working on it in the background for a few months. So we launched on the same day with an integration of Thor Chain. And I put a tweet out on Tuesday showing in the Shapeshift app a $5,000 trade of Ethereum into Bitcoin. I posted the blockchain addresses of both. There was no wrapping of any kind happening, and it works. So anyone can go do it today.
That is incredible. That is a huge milestone.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. I think a lot of people don't quite believe it, because this industry is very noisy, and a lot of people have promises and white papers, saying that they'll do everything. Thor Chain shipped it on Tuesday.
So I was reading about your update recently on that Thor Chain integration, and you said that Thor Chain extends Bitcoin's attributes of immutability from the money layer to the exchange layer. Right now, we're seeing all sorts of new products getting released onto DeFi, like decentralized options. We have things like Kijik and Open. You also have like aggregators like Wire and Octopi. What do you think are the next areas in that stack beyond the money layer and the exchange layer that are due for innovation?
Well, first, I think it's important to focus on that exchange layer. Like these protocols, the money, Bitcoin or Ethereum, if you want to call that money, have been decentralized and immutable. But the moment you try to start exchanging them, you lose the immutability quickly. Now, Ethereum has solved that with a lot of these DEXs, but Bitcoin was still stuck in the state where Bitcoin was the best money on earth, but 99.99% of the trading of Bitcoin happened in custodial exchanges. That's always been a travesty and a really hard problem to solve. So just the fact that now trading in a decentralized, immutable way can occur on Bitcoin as well as the other major chains without wrapping is huge. That's going to have profound consequences. I think what it also means is that these DeFi concepts, which are themselves really profound and powerful, like just lending markets themselves is a massive industry in the traditional financial world. It is moving into the decentralized world with projects like Compound and Aave in Ethereum, where you can actually post crypto as collateral and receive loans of different assets in a totally decentralized way, no counterparty, no intermediary. But again, it's all existed on Ethereum. So now that there are starting to be these bridges that are also decentralized between assets, the concept of DeFi itself will emerge out of the Ethereum walled garden and into some of these other chains and importantly across chains. Certain chains are good for some things and not for others. And so the ability for decentralized finance to exist above that layer is really key. Thor Chain is helping with that. Projects like Cosmos are helping with that, where chains can start talking to each other more easily. So 2021 is going to be a profoundly important year for crypto development, despite whatever's happening with the price.
So what does this mean for exchanges like Coinbase then? If I can, in a decentralized manner, directly swap something like Ethereum for Bitcoin on Shapeshift?
Coinbase still has a massive addressable market that it can go after, right? So they have something like 50 million user accounts. That's still tiny. It's a tiny fraction of the world's population. I think Coinbase, without changing a single thing about their business, will be highly successful for many years to come. But my hope is that the world doesn't end up just with a bunch of new custodians, right? Like if Coinbase, Gemini, BlockFi, the centralized Binance exchange, if 10 years from now, that is where most digital assets are held and traded, we kind of failed. Like that, we kind of screwed up somewhere along the line, because those entities will end up little different from banks themselves. They're a little more innovative. Yes, they have crypto inside instead of dollars, and that's good. But you're not going to get the fundamental advantages of decentralization if everyone is just using centralized custodians. So I hope that as Coinbase grows and becomes a gazillion-dollar company, it also acts primarily as a bridge to move people from the fiat banking world into the crypto decentralized world, with Coinbase being a really lucrative bridge in the middle.
That certainly sounds like a major concern, that the exchanges simply become the new banks and kind of co-opt cryptocurrency and the decentralized purpose of it.
Yeah, it's a concern in that we should be mindful of it. Like, we should all realize that that's not the direction that the industry should go. But I'm not too concerned that it will go that way. Watching the rise of DeFi over the last year really inspired me to see like how well this stuff is moving in the decentralized direction. The UX has gotten good enough that people are flooding into DeFi and using it at billions of dollars of scale. And and it's innovating so fast that the UX will get even better, the technology will get even better. And I think a lot of people will find it to be very easy to use, very comfortable, very safe with time. And I don't think that there's too much risk that people will stick with the custodians.
Interesting take there. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit and go over to another phenomenon that's happening in DeFi. There seems to have been a sudden rise in interest in NFTs. So we saw Beeple conduct his kind of historic $69 million sale of his everydays, which is the third highest ever for a living artist. Is this a speculative bubble, or is there actually some sort of value that's being generated here?
Yeah, it's definitely both. So in crypto and in kind of in like innovation generally, you tend to get true innovation and it sparks speculative bubbles around that innovation. So we've seen this with Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin has gone through 3 or 4 major speculative bubble cycles. It will go through some more before it becomes mainstream. And, was Bitcoin a bubble or was it a transformative technology? It was both. Ethereum has gone through the same kind of pattern. Is Ethereum a bubble or is it a transformative technology? It's been through both. NFTs are the same. I think the concept of NFTs, of digital scarcity in non-fungible assets is real, is legitimate, is going to be a profoundly relevant part of society. And at the same time is in a wild speculative bubble right now. And I think a lot of people are just throwing money at crazy stuff. So just as in any bubble, it's important to look through the noise and to realize there is something really profound here, but not to get caught up in thinking that every piece of art that an artist creates is going to go sell for $10 or $10 million on the market. Like that's not sustainable. But there will be people who make literally millions of dollars creating beautiful things in NFTs, and that will become a mainstay. So it's a little of both.
Well, thanks for sharing that. And another question I had going through some of your past writing is, you predict that in the next 5 years there's going to be some sort of major financial crisis or collapse, and this plays nicely into what's happening right now with a lot of the, new wave quantitative easing, stimulus, COVID relief. What do you think are going to be the indicators that something like that is on the horizon or happening, and why are you confident that it's going to happen in the next 5 years?
So we're in a state of the global economy in which governments print money to solve problems. And they can wrap that act in any fancy academic language they want. But they're just printing money to stimulate growth. And growth is measured by GDP. And when you print money, obviously more money is flowing around, so GDP rises, and then it just self-justifies them doing that. This is not sustainable at all. The debasement of currency almost always leads to inflation and then hyperinflation and then fiat currency collapse. This has been a very often repeating pattern throughout history. People forget that the US dollar is only 50 years old. It became fiat in the early 70s and has been debased perpetually since then at an accelerating rate. So if you understand how exponential numbers work, and you see the US government debt, and you see the US dollar money supply, those are on their way to catastrophe. In a world without cryptocurrency, there isn't much alternative. There's always gold, but gold does not work practically in a digital economy unless you're using custodians who issue digital gold certificates, but then those custodians are always under the grip of the governments. So now that you have digital currency, now that there's Bitcoin, people can opt out of that destruction of fiat into an alternative. So this is both a story of immense misery that's going to happen as the world falls apart from a currency collapse. And it's also a story of renewal and growth and hope from an alternative that is finally in existence. So what should people watch for to know that this is like in its final stages? Probably the best indicator is the 10-year Treasury rate. Still very low, 1.6%, something like that. That will spike over the coming years. And I think when it gets into the 3% and higher phase, is when people should be really worried, because at that point, the interest on the debt accelerates at a rate that cannot be overcome, but by printing more money, which then just accelerates the problem. So yeah, I'm really worried about it. It's not going to be a fun or happy transition. It's going to be really brutal, and a lot of people are going to get completely destroyed and impoverished by it. And those who have been advocating for sound money for a long time, hopefully will be able to, save as many people as they can before the destruction hits.
So recently we've seen the M1, the actual base money supply increase tremendously from stimulus. So why aren't we seeing inflation right now then?
I mean, we are. It's just not in the things that people often look at, right? So there has not been significant price appreciation in things like food, but the stock market is at all-time highs on the back of a catastrophic global pandemic. Why in the world should stocks be at an all-time high after an economic catastrophe that literally cost the world trillions of dollars? The price of stocks soaring is an effect of the inflating money supply. Now, it's true that many other areas of the economy have not shown drastic increases in price. I think those happen with time. We've seen it in some of the base commodities already, like lumber. And people shouldn't be tricked into thinking that you can print a bunch of money without the debasement of the currency happening. They are one and the same. If they are printing money, that is the inflation. And when and how prices rise is a secondary effect of that inflation of the money supply. So, anyone who wants to continue to hold dollars over the long term, good luck with that. I'm going to stick with sound money, things that are not being perpetually debased.
So do you also think that the rise in the stock market is connected to the rise in the cryptocurrency market over the last quarter?
In general, all things equal, when a bunch of money gets printed, you will see speculative bubbles in lots of assets. So I don't think it's unfair to say that a lot of the crypto appreciation is because of the inflation of money, but that's also kind of the point. The part of the reason that people own crypto is because dollars will be devalued forever. So is that a legitimate reason for the rally or not? That's for anyone to decide. But certainly speculative assets are going to be rising in a period in which the base money supply is expanding rapidly.
So it sounds like when you refer back to sound money, you're referring specifically to Bitcoin. And I've heard you write before that taxation, borrowing, and printing, those are really the levers of government, and that because governments will continue to print money, fiat will have this cycle where it'll be stable for some short period of time, and then it'll be kept printing, and people lose confidence in it, and then something else will replace it. Is that roughly accurate?
More accurately, fiat isn't stable. It's close to stable, but it generally loses a few percent of its value every year and has been for decades. Since the 70s, it's lost 80 or 90% of its value. So is that stable? Over decades, it's not at all stable. It's declining over those decades. On a day-to-day basis, it's relatively stable. The question for people looking at that is, would you rather hold value in something that is relatively stable but always declining, or something that is relatively volatile but appreciating, like Bitcoin? It seems silly to hold money in something that is declining forever just because it's declining in a stable way. That's an interesting investment thesis. Bitcoin is far sounder money than dollars, and over time will win in a competitive race with a currency that is printed out of nothing forever.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can see that something has to replace fiat, whether it's another fiat currency or Bitcoin. But what makes you confident that Bitcoin's going to be the winner in the race of sound monies? what are the indicators that you're seeing there? And obviously, there's a lot of history there. Bitcoin's been the longest standing. It has a lot of aspects pointing that it is going to win this race. But I want to get your thoughts on why, in a market where there's dozens of different cryptocurrencies and innovation happening in every segment of this market, why won't it happen on the money layer?
So it might. So Bitcoin is currently the most likely crypto asset to become the new base money of the world. And it has held that position ever since it was first created back in 2008 and 2009. It is by far the most liquid. It is by far the most recognized around the world. It is by far the most conservative. Hold on, my cat is like being crazy. All right. So it is winning in all those important metrics. And one of the things that you can't innovate away is like the conservative nature of Bitcoin. You can't just innovate liquidity. So Bitcoin doesn't have like a place that can never be disposed by a different asset. People shouldn't assume it will be the dominant asset of the world, but is currently the most likely. There's nothing really that comes close. And whether it's Bitcoin or a different crypto asset doesn't really matter. The point is to have a decentralized sound money asset that the world can use instead of fiat and banks. And as long as that happens, that's the most important.
So I've heard that previously you've been described as a reformed Bitcoin maxi. Is that a component of what has changed your philosophy in terms of having this belief that Bitcoin's going to be number one in perpetuity?
Yeah, I was definitely a Bitcoin maxi, back in like 2013. I thought that all the other altcoins were a distraction at best, scams at worst, and that people should really just be focused on and paying attention to the important project, which was Bitcoin. My mind's changed on that for a couple reasons. One is that I saw that a lot of these other projects weren't trying to just be base money. They were trying to build in other directions or trying to solve different problems. And I saw value in that. So there's a reason to have other blockchains and other digital assets, even if Bitcoin is the only money. And two, I realized that one of the most important features of Bitcoin is decentralization. And if you have the entire future economy of the world built on one chain, that in and of itself is not decentralized. That there is resiliency and anti-fragility in a world where you have different design parameters around crypto assets. And so just if you respect this decentralization thesis of Bitcoin, you have to respect and be encouraged that there are other digital assets and other blockchains around it. That the ecosystem of these technologies is part of the decentralization that Bitcoin began. So on those two reasons, I lost the maximalism. And fast forward to today, you can't look at what's happening in DeFi and in the Ethereum world and not be just profoundly inspired. Like there is so much incredible stuff happening in DeFi. As a Bitcoiner, I see that stuff and am just in awe. And I am so excited by that innovation because it is part of the transformation from fiat and banks to decentralized finance. So I think it's a much happier life to embrace a lot of these technologies. And still, many of these projects are stupid. Many of them are scams, but a number of them are very profound and important. And so I embrace quality wherever I can see it.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Erik. It's been a pleasure talking with you today, and I really hope that we get the chance to meet up again in the future.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been fun.